Hello and welcome back to another episode of UK Crossover, your UK-based Philadelphia 76ers podcast. So, what was an incredibly exciting week, be that with a 70-point performance from Joel Embiid and what seemed to be the start of a really good charge as we enter the All-Star week, and then we'll, of course, with the brilliant news of Tyrese Maxey becoming an All-Star. That all comes crashing down to earth in true Philadelphia fashion with the news that Embiid is out indefinitely. And it does not sound good. It sounds like this could be a time period of 2 months, maybe longer, could be the season, according to some. So it has been a very dismal week in Philadelphia sports, but this is hardly anything new. We're used to it by now, but for whatever reason, we still don't quite know how to handle this terrible news. As always, I am joined by Sam Oakley. So, Sam, do you want to say a quick hello?
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in again for episode 2. We believe we got several downloads for the first episode, so me and Ben really appreciate that. And unfortunately, it's more of a sad one. After a positive start, it's the sad episode this week.
It certainly is. And I'm not sure if you'd mind, but I sort of want to start this off with a bit of a soliloquy, as it were. And I sort of wanted to start this because of all the issues that Embiid faced post the Denver game, all the allegations of ducking. And I
hmm
understand the annoyances, but they are fundamentally the arguments put forward on social media were misleading and
hmm
outright wrong. And as a result, people started to question, or at least we certainly got involved in arguments, respectful arguments, it's worth saying, online saying, okay, why is it you think this about Embiid's ducking this person? Let's think about what you're actually arguing and the fallacies behind it, because fundamentally what you're arguing is wrong. And then people were making various claims about how, oh, okay, we don't have these narratives. It's not because of some agenda. But I don't think people have taken that opportunity to take a step back and look at the evidence that's been put in front of them. They take a lot of these arguments from authority, the Kendrick Perkins of the world, that say he's ducking him, and therefore this is the evidence you need. It's like, well, no. If we look at this, the
hmm
medical staff say he shouldn't have played, therefore he shouldn't have played in Denver. So that's fair enough. He
hmm
then, previously in the last two matchups against Jokic, has knocked him for 6 and completely dominated him to a point where he's got a 6-2 record on the fella. Why on earth does he then go and dodge him at his place? That quite simply doesn't add up. And
No.
then from there, people then go off this whole, oh, he hasn't played there since 2019. Let's look at that. Let's break that down, because that is a genuine statistic we can look at. So let's look at that. Okay, he plays in 2019, and I recall that game. I'm not sure if you do, Sam. Jokic scored a late bucket over Embiid. Fair play to the guy.
hmm
2020, he missed 3 weeks because he had a 3-week injury, and that means he couldn't play in Denver. That's nothing he can do. He was injured before he even got to Denver, and he was out for 3 weeks. Then he was out for COVID protocols. So the year after, couldn't play. The year after, load management. You know what? Fair enough. That's a bit of a shame. That is one you can complain about. And then this last one, he was injured against the Pacers. You can complain that he shouldn't have played against the Pacers, absolutely. But when you look at that statistic, it's purposely misleading and doesn't actually tell you the fact that he could only really have played one of those games. So
hmm
that's one of them. And then you have the quote from Ramona Shelburne, an NBA insider, who's one of the actual insiders that doesn't try to pursue narratives, but genuinely seems to just put across cold, hard facts that says he was desperate to play, but they had to almost drag him off the floor. He couldn't jump. So when we look at this information, when you look at all the evidence and you put it all together, you bundle it together, you can quite clearly see that Embiid quite simply couldn't play. But for whatever reason, we have all these stupid arguments about, oh, he's ducking Jokic, he's ducking this guy. And I'm just sat there thinking, come on now.
hmm
I know you don't like him, but let's just be real for one moment. Look at this evidence that we can get together, and you will see that what you are saying just simply doesn't add up. Do I get why you don't like him? Yes, I do. But let's start putting a bit more respect on his name and start just not trying to pursue these narratives and get these unnecessary clicks and likes onto your clearly bait tweets. So that is my rant over. And I'm not sure if you have a similar rant. I probably would imagine you do, but I'm not sure if you've got anything to add to that.
No, you say it in a much better way than me, but I 100% agree. The stats, like you say, were there. And I think last year you have to blame the NBA for that because, like you say, why put Denver on the end of a long road trip? Of course, or in the middle, sorry, of a long road trip. Of course, he's not going to potentially play that game. This year it looked like it should be better. Like you said, Pacers game, he got injured, and that was a couple of days between that and the Denver game. But he clearly can play. And then when he did play against Golden State, there's that really bad clip of him like trying to run back and he just slips over. He's not even like he doesn't even like he tries to jump. I don't know what he's trying to do, but he just collapses and comes out of the game, goes back in the game. So and it wasn't him doing his usual like because some people are like, oh, that's him just faking it. Well, early on when the tweet first surfaced onto X, and I was like, people straight away thinking he's flopping or trying to make the most of it. And it's like, no, I think he did want to play, right? He did. But, and like you say, I can imagine them trying to drag him off the court because he loves the attention as much as the one thing that annoys about Embiid is that he does love that center of attention. He loves doing the DX celebration, knowing that he gets into trouble for it. He loves, doing all the fan stuff. He loves social media trolling. So of course he reads social media and probably thinks I need to play in these games because people have been saying it. So it is frustrating, but yeah, me and you called out a few people, UK, US, arguing. In the end, I just had to learn not to bite. There's a few people that we know are troll accounts intentionally and they're good fun with it normally, but unfortunately, there were some people that were putting the pressure on big names in the US, and Embiid clearly read that and played and shouldn't have against Golden State.
Yeah. And I think, the frustration that we have as Sixer fans is that, I think a lot of people therefore go on to claim, oh, this is just people blinding, blind loyalty to their player that will follow anything he says or does, regardless of what, if it's good or bad. I think Philadelphia is the only sort of city that will have its fans, call a spade a spade.
Mm-hmm.
We will not blindly just follow a player and say everything he does is amazing. If something's lackluster, we will say it. You looked at that last playoff series against the Celtics. People were calling for a lot of high level players' head, and we've seen that in what's happened with the Eagles, what's happened with the Phillies, what's happened with the Sixers over the last year.
Don't remind
No
me about
one's
the Eagles. I mean,
no one's too big to avoid criticism, and
no.
Embiid's part of that. If he's due criticism, he will get it, and we'll come on to criticism that he is deserving of this from this week. But I think what I'll finish with is that every playoff we get to, when we get knocked out inevitably in every second round, people say he needs to be healthy. You need to manage him in the regular season. The regular season means nothing. We do that. We are then
Yeah.
criticized for managing him. You
Mm-hmm.
can't have your cake and eat it. Pick which one you want, okay? If you want him to be in every single regular season game, this is what happens. If you want
Mm-hmm.
him to be ready for the playoffs, then unfortunately we're going to have to miss a few games here and there. Pick a side.
Yeah, exactly. And the more money, the TV firms, even though they're not happy, like, I know ABC, ESPN weren't happy potentially with that. I'm sure there wasn't with the advertisement commercials and stuff, but you're going to make that back in an ABC, ESPN Sunday game, round 2 or round 1 if Embiid's healthy, right? So, more people watch that. And Embiid is the number one athlete from the African region. So it's not it's you can have Africa, Europe, you get everyone watches it, and like I say, people will watch it even who aren't like necessarily Sixers fans because it's their star player. If we had a British player that wasn't playing for the Sixers, I'd probably go. I'd probably watch their games more intensely during the playoffs, even alongside the
Yep.
Sixers. So yeah, I agree. I think it's really harsh that we've had that criticism. And the hypocrites across both all sides of the world. Really, it's not just been the US. I've seen it from all across the world, from NBA accounts, famous people in all across the world moaning about Embiid missing games, but will be the same ones that want to see him play in the second round.
Yeah. I think, the long and the short of it, and I'll try and leave it here now, is I don't think people have actually properly looked at the evidence. And I think what I would say to it is just do your research. Look at, okay, where's his injuries have come from? Why is it he's had to play on a lessened timetable compared to everyone else? Because of the same things that you've been saying on social media. And then, like you alluded to, we know he looks in it. We know that the reason he came out against Golden State Warriors is because all these people called him out on socials. And he was like, I'm not having that. I'm going to go to Golden State. I'm going to go up against Stephen Curry. I'm going to go up against Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, go into the Oracle Arena and show them that I am a legit player in this league, which of course he is. But for whatever reason, he has to prove that to a higher threshold than the vast majority of superstars and MVPs, which, let's not forget, he is an MVP, have to do.
Yeah.
So he has to do that for whatever reason. He has to overdo it, and then he gets injured. Now, am I blaming all of his injuries on just random people on socials? No, but it's a contributing factor. And this is where we got to get to the point of Joel Embiid has a lot of blame for why we are in this situation. So I'm going to let you take the reins from here because I've said an awful lot in this opening segment. So where does the blame lie for you? I mean, naturally, we've talked about the former, but how is it that he's at fault here?
I'd say I'd say about 70% because you're the player, right? So you've got to make. So I completely agree with what you're saying, and I think there's a small bit of blame on potentially his advisory team and the Sixers, and how you split that. I don't know, because it's the money side of it as well. And I know Barkley touched on this on Inside the NBA about the all NBA and the MVP awards and stuff. And I don't know if that was a driving factor in it for him, but he's definitely influenced by that. He's 28, 29 years old, late 20s now. You've been in the league for a few years. You grow up a little bit. You've got your child now. You're less trolling on the internet now. So he's slowly getting there. But his advisors, just think about your longevity. He's already missed the first 2 years of his career. And that's what a lot of people forget as well. I remember when we drafted him and he was injured, and, another center comes in. You're like, okay, we've already got Noel. And then you have to get Okafor. And you had that process of 2 years of that. And then it's just like, oh, we get him back. And he only plays like 30, 40 games his first full year. So like first 3 years, he only played like 40 games. So he's got to look after himself. 20 years ago, he would not be in the NBA because the technology and the sports science wouldn't have been there. So that's where I think the advisory, the medical team, you've got to put them first. Probably a bad example, and if anyone's a Sheffield United fan, I'm going to apologise for this, but they were speaking to Wilder before the game, and I can't remember what player they were on about. It might have been McBride or someone, but someone just returned from an injury, and they said, "Why aren't you playing him?" He's like, "We just felt it's best to rest him as part of it as a medical decision not to play him. He wanted to play, but we've sat him out for today's game. Obviously, he just got thrashed, but that's the right approach. So the club should take. He's an asset to the club, to the Sixers, to the city. So that's why I'm saying 70-30, 70% Embiid, 30% franchise plus advisors."
Yeah, it is that idea of maturing and realizing what's at stake here, because now we are in such a dilemma. And the last couple of weeks we were talking about, and we all love the trade season. We were talking about, okay, who should we go for? This guy? Should we go for Malcolm Brogdon? Shall we really swing for the fences and get DeJounte Murray? Shall we get Kyle Lowry in the buyout? Shall we maybe even go for like a DeMar DeRozan or a Zach LaVine? I mean, who knows? It really is sort of it was quite an exciting period of time. It didn't look like we were going to do an awful lot, but now we are in a position where, well, hang on a bit. If there's no Embiid in the playoffs, there's no point doing any of these moves. But he could be here in the playoffs. And the vibe I'm getting at the moment is that is a coin flip, which means you've got to try and figure out within the next week, if you make huge commitments to players, like, for example, let's say we go and get Zach LaVine. It's not someone I want, but he's on an expensive deal, which is a multi-year. If you go for him, you are going for him under the assumption that you have Joel Embiid. If you go for him and you don't have Joel Embiid, then you have just given away assets for someone who's going to severely weigh you down in the future, similar to how Tobias Harris has done with his large contract. But on the flip side of that, if you don't go for, let's say, a DeJounte Murray, and Joel Embiid's back, and then we lose in the second round, and then we sit there thinking, God, wouldn't it be great if we got DeJounte Murray or we had Malcolm Brogdon coming off the bench? Then you just left there kicking yourself as to why we didn't move when we did. So Daryl Morey's got a really impossible task for me of trying to figure out what's he got to do over this next week? And it's easier for us because we don't have the $1 million job of trying to figure that one out. So how do you approach this? What do you suggest?
Oh, that's a good question. You're kind of hitting all the right points there. It's purely dependent on how he's going to be, and I think surgery seems like it sounds like surgery is the most likely scenario, and then it's a case of how bad is it just a little minor bit of surgery, which means he's back potentially start of April, and you can maybe get him ready for the first round and play a few of the last couple of games. And then the worst case scenario is he's not back till next season. And then, like you say, do you want to make those trades? I mean, I think if you can get a center, like if Chicago are blowing it up, maybe you could get Drummond back, get the rebound and let Maxey go off. And then if you can, maybe get another player that can score alongside Maxey. And then if Embiid comes back, it's a bonus. But I suppose the other good thing is I suspect that Morey knows the outcome, and he's probably playing his cards close to his chest, so he doesn't give it. Because if he comes out and says, "Yeah, he's going to be out for months," even if he says he's out for a couple of months, people are going to be like, "Well, you're desperate for a trade." Whereas if he's still indicates it could be weeks, yeah. So I think he's doing the right thing there. So I can see he's approaching it well, but like you say, I'm not paid whatever we're paying him, a couple $1 million a year to make that decision. So yeah, that I'm glad I'm not on that hot seat. Not that I think Harris would sack him and those guys, but I wouldn't want to be Josh Harris and Daryl Morey in a room trying to work out what to do if Embiid is out potentially for the playoffs.
And I think what's quite unique, perhaps, about this trade deadline is that there are so many different avenues you can go down. Like, theoretically, if you told me that the Sixers only need to improve by a couple buyouts and a few trades here and there on the minor levels, I would say, yeah. But then if you went and told me we need to get that third star, I would also say I can see that. And then there's everything in between. There's so many moving pieces. You got Morris's contract, Covington's contract, Furkan's, House, Harris, of course. There are so many different routes we can go down to improve this team, and therefore it's that much harder to you almost got too much choice, which sounds weird, but you genuinely do. So you are absolutely right. And where we go from here, I do not know. I do love the Drummond shout because we have been so short of rebounding since, even with Embiid. And Drummond, I mean, I thought he's the best backup center Embiid's had, absolutely no arguments there. So if we could somehow sort that would be brilliant. Obviously, the pipe dream alongside that would be Alex Caruso. And I was listening to someone say earlier, Torrey Craig, or Craig, but Craig as our American cousins like to say. He would be a brilliant, just 3-and-D wing, and that would be another shrewd acquisition to make. But the Bulls are so reluctant to blow it up that I'm not entirely sure that they'll really engage in such a deal. But we'll just have to wait and see. But I think, we talked about here's what we might need for the playoffs. But even on a more wider looking perspective, it's, well, what does the playoffs look like? Because the statistics show with Embiid, we are 28-6, or roughly. And then without, we are 3-9. So theoretically speaking, that must therefore mean that for the remainder of this season, we are going to be winning about a third of our games. Probably about a quarter to a third of our games. So are we going to be in the third seed? Probably not. Are we going to be in the fifth seed, fourth seed, sixth seed? Could it go that catastrophic that we're in the play-in? And then we're going to need him even a week earlier than that. And it just creates a whole load of issues. Like, why would you commit to a team why would you go all in the trade deadline if you're only a playing team? And then it's just another conundrum. I mean, where do you think we end? What seed do you see us finishing at?
I mean, if Maxey can do what he did the other night, which I'm sure we'll touch on in a sec, but if he could do that, then we could probably get the fifth seed. That's probably the most realistic one. If Embiid's going to miss and we don't make a trade, it's probably fifth or sixth seed is probably the realistic best case scenario. You can't say, yeah, with Embiid out, you're going to make the top 4 seed and get a first round home court. I don't think that's realistic to expect. Could we do it? Absolutely. If Harris has, instead of 1 every 4 or 5 games, be good in 2 or 3 out of the 5, great. And like I say, if Maxey can do that, but again, you can't rely on them to do it. So yeah, no trade, 5th, 6th seed, buyout, trade. We can get 4th or 3rd, but we would need some lot of luck for us to get that. Like you say, find the right suitor, and yeah, I don't know, pull off a unique trade that Daryl has done for Houston, but hasn't quite done for. I mean, the LA trade, the trade with Harden was good. To be fair, that wasn't a bad trade, but that's the only trade that I've looked at and gone, wow, that's a really, really good trade by Daryl. So he needs to do that. I would say Harry Roseman-esque, like he's done for the Eagles, but unfortunately this year his trades didn't quite plan off. But yeah. What about you? What are you thinking? You thinking lower end of the
I'm
playoff season?
I must admit I'm looking towards that 5th, 6th like you are, but I'm less worried, I'd say. And the reason I say that is because I do think, touch wood, Embiid will be back, and I think Embiid in this side, we can beat anyone in the East. Boston, I'm a bit more hesitant on, but bearing in mind Milwaukee have Doc Rivers, this is the best time to be playing Milwaukee in very recent years, because you just fancy us simply because we've got far superior coaching, I think. So that's just another reason why you want to sort of say, let's roll the dice, let's go at it, let's go all in. And I can see us therefore getting the likes of Kyle Lowry in the buyout. Kyle Lowry is going to be a Sixer at one point in his career. I'm adamant, and I think now it's going to happen. So that's just a little side note there, but it's just there's so much that could go wrong all of a sudden. But in this post Embiid injury era, the mini era as you would call it, someone had to step up to the plate. Me being me, I was pretty adamant we were going to lose when we went into Salt Lake City to play the Jazz, and I made that very clear online. I wake up to lovely news that Tyrese Maxey gets a career high 51 points, and we win by 3. So what do I know? But that was a really fantastic sort of pick me up, especially with his All-Star appearance, which he rightfully deserves. So, I mean, talk me through your thoughts and feelings of that game. I mean, that was just exactly, I think, what the fan base needed.
Yeah, definitely. I think when I was the same as you though. I was like, that's it. I'm not going to watch this game live. I haven't. This has been the worst week for me watching games live. I've been pretty consistent this year. Nick Nurse has got me watching games live, so I've been excited by the team that he's created and the play. But I didn't expect it. So I woke up I left the TNT on and on my iPad, and I just looked over, and I just happened to wake up at the right time, and they were reviewing Maxey's performance, and I was like, am I dreaming, or did he just say that Maxey just dropped 50 odd points and we've won the game? And then I watched the game back. But yeah, we needed that boost. He's such a likable athlete. I think the popularity has been shown by the jersey sales that I saw the other day, but the city of Philadelphia, you've got Bryce Harper's probably the #1 most loved athlete in Philadelphia. Sorry, Jason Kelsey, who's retiring by the sounds of it, but they're playing right now. If he does retire, it's going to be Bryce Harper. And then you got a massive love-hate relationship with Embiid. But the one player on the Sixers that no one criticizes or has a bad word to say against is Maxey. And I think the city just love him and his smile and the way he is. So it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. And then to become an all-star, I think it's like the whole city's just so proud of him. So I think it's such an uplift. So hopefully that continues into tonight's game.
Yeah, I mean, I seem to recall. I remember I was having a conversation with Rich, obviously a diehard Celtics fan, and even he was like, I really like the bloke, and I think there is something so infectious about his game and about his approach to the NBA. He seems like he's got a big personality, but he doesn't seem like he's one of those people that takes himself too seriously. There's something quite raw, and it's still quite, he hasn't been sort of. I don't think he's been overly infatuated with the NBA lifestyle, which can sometimes consume others. When I think of perhaps the Kyle Kuzmas of the world, that saw the bright lights of LA and perhaps got a bit too over involved in it. Let's say he's a great player, Kuzma. By the way, I would love him. I would love him to be traded to Philly in this trade season if we could. But you know that vibe of player that perhaps has their focus on other things, which is their prerogative. But for a working class blue collar city like Philadelphia, this is the sort of player you do want. But yeah, no, I was so happy to see it. 'Cause I was a bit concerned that purely by the popularity contest that the All-Star contest is, that he might not get it, and quite rightfully he managed to squeeze in on there in the reserve. So really happy for him.
Well, he came second in player voting, didn't he, for the guard position in the East? So the respect from his peers. I mean, if I was a player, that would mean more to me than the other. You know, if you said to me, okay, the van vote you weren't as high because only the Sixers fans and some others, but coming second in your peer compare like that would be a proud moment for me. So no, he's definitely respected by his peers.
Definitely. And if we can just give him a bit of help to ensure he unlocks his game, I think that'd be even better. I mean, I was listening to a Philadelphia pod earlier today, and I've had to do my digging just with Philadelphia history to get back up to speed with things. And you'll probably know this comparison because this was during your time, so to speak. But what Maxey needs in the backcourt is someone next to him, similar to what Eric Snow did for Allen Iverson. Just come in, alleviate some of the pressure. It's not to say steal the show, just say some of the plays, I'll sort it. You go do your thing, and then you be great. And I think that's exactly right. And that's why Morey might want to look to Kyle Lowry or look to Malcolm Brogdon or look to Alex Caruso, someone that's come in, steady as ship and say, you do your thing. Don't overcomplicate your game.
That's a
which I
good
thought was
one,
a really interesting take.
Yeah, I mean, you had Aaron McKee come off the bench as well, and he provided a bit of scoring to free up from when Iverson was there. But yeah, Snow did all that dirty work, and you had George Lynch probably did a lot of the dirty work, like the hustle plays, rebounding. And I don't think we had that. That's the problem we don't have. We don't have that guy. Like Paul Reed's probably close to that, but like we don't have that player that's doing that. The person that should be doing that, if he's not putting up the points, is Harris, and Harris sometimes does it, sometimes doesn't. So I see that there is that mold is there. You need to have that person that's quite happy. And I dare say his name, but during their run, Draymond Green was obviously one of the ones that didn't score 20, 30 points every game. He was doing a lot of the dirty work. Yeah. Now it is legitimate dirty, but he was doing all the other stuff and getting the ball out to just getting the ball to the get to Stephen Clay. And that's never changed. It's never going to change. LeBron has that with him. He always has a player that will do that'll do dirty work for him and stuff like that. Will not take the line and just have one superstar with him. Apart from when he was in Miami and he had the three, but I only say I don't really count that because Bosch never really played that much. It was just him and Wade. So yeah, I like that concept, but I just don't know if I've heard Charlotte might not buy out Lowry, so it does. So I don't know if he would, but if he does, I'd definitely want him playing 15, 20 minutes a night.
Yeah, definitely. So we are in action tonight, and it's not early by any means, but it's actually at a decent time for us. So that's 11 o'clock tonight, back in Philadelphia, and we are playing the Brooklyn Nets. And I think this has in more recent years become a very spicy affair, and we know why. It's because of a certain gentleman called Ben Simmons. Now, we were on just briefly before starting the pod, just talking about how actually Ben Simmons could cause us a lot of issues here. Because I was suggesting to you that if you put 6'10" Ben Simmons on 6'2" Tyrese Maxey, then Maxey's got his work cut out for him because we need Maxey to score big to win games. We need him to score 51 to beat the Jazz by 3. So we're going to need an awful lot from him again. And Tobias Harris as well, who had a decent game against the Jazz, worth noting, 26 points. So we need them to combine again for near enough 60, 70 points. And Ben Simmons can really disrupt that. And I'm thinking Dorian Finney-Smith and Mikal Bridges on the wings can also disrupt that. So how do you see us getting on tonight?
Well, yeah, I think that's a good shout. He's down as probable, so I think Simmons will play. It'll be interesting to see how he handles it because a lot of our fans aren't in the best of mood right now. We'll celebrate with Maxey, but obviously they've still got that hangover of the Embiid. So you might get a bit of what we would say banter, but maybe a bit more. It's a tough one. It is a tough one. I would say it's going to be a close game, and it's Maxey's homecoming, so I'm going to say we win by 7 or 8 points. What about you?
I haven't got a good feeling. I'm not feeling good. I feel like I always have, whenever we play the Nets, it feels like Spencer Dinwiddie always does bits against us.
Yes.
And I feel like he's going to get at least 17, 18 points tonight, decent splits. And then Ben Simmons, I don't think Ben Simmons is going to necessarily have one of his, you know what a good Ben Simmons game looks like 15, 8, and 10 or something like that. I don't think he's going to have that, but I think he'll just keep it relatively solid really solid on the defensive end. That's where he'll have his impact. And then he'll come out with probably something like 8, 8, 8. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something like that. The triple single. And that'll be enough. And so I'm perhaps being negative. Mikal Bridges, he's always got a point to prove whenever he comes back to Philadelphia, because this is the man that should be in that Philadelphia red, white, and blue. That is the one that got away. We all know what's happened with that. I don't want to, go back over that fateful draft night. But that is the guy that got away. And it's so ironic because he would fit beautifully in this team right now. But that's just.
But we might not have had Maxey because the pick that came with it. So it's one of those that we then flipped.
It's butterfly effect, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's a knock-on effect. But yeah, no, I agree. He is the one that got away. Zaire Smith,
Yeah.
why? But anyway.
I'm
So
feeling,
what do you reckon? Single digit win, loss, sorry, or
I'm feeling Brooklyn double digits. I don't know why, and I hope I'm wrong.
So
I'm
do
just
I,
feeling
yeah.
it. I think I'm naturally cynical, and you and I, we both support Southampton. We both know that naturally there has to be cynicism built into our predictions whenever it comes to any of our sports teams. So perhaps some sort of trying to. Well, I still haven't quite got out of my my ways in that one, but yeah, I am unfortunately going to go for a Brooklyn double-digit win. And they've got players in the shop window. They've got players in the shop window that want out. They know how to get out, hit threes, make buckets, win games.
That is true. Well, start with a sad bit, end on a sad bit, and a nice little bit in the middle. So I think they call that a shit sandwich or a poo sandwich. But yeah, so
UK crossover.
Yeah, UK crossover. Yeah. Well, we'll wrap it up there. I think we'll put this one on YouTube. I didn't put the last one on YouTube. That was my fault. But please like, subscribe, and actually leave feedback on iTunes, because that helps promote it. I didn't realize that. I thought it didn't make much difference. But we had several downloads, and on Spotify as well. Please leave reviews on that. And follow us on X. Ben's got the #1 account that you can follow, which is what, Ben?
That is at UK 76ers. So yeah, as Sam said, that is over on X. So that is where all my ramblings, rantings, and various trade predictions or hopes end up, but none of it ends up being true. I can dream.
Indeed. Well, yes, indeed. And we have some great conversations in the private group chat that Ben set up on there. So make sure you go on there and follow us, because I'm hoping everyone that listens to this is a Sixers fan, and it's not just someone listening in to then take the mick out of us over some predictions, aka probably Rich from the Celtics fan group, I can imagine doing.
But yeah, if you want to be part of that group chat, just drop us a DM, either Sam or myself, and we'll get you in. It's so long as you're a Sixers fan, you want to chat, we'll add you on in.
Yeah, thanks, and trust the process.